The recent wildfires have shaken Angelenos to their core, and rightly so. I imagine it's not dissimilar from those who have experienced fires in Hawaii, other parts of California, or elsewhere, or those who suffered through hurricanes, floods, wind events, or any other major natural disasters. As a matter of fact, I know it's not dissimilar, but I think this was different. This essay is one in an ongoing series to shine a light and elaborate on recent events and how they directly affect the shelter space, the design industry. I've shared this story with you before, but for the sake of those new to the show, I'll share it again to make a point. That point is that while wildfires in Southern California are not new, nor are earthquakes, floods, or civil unrest for that matter, the wildfire is an emerging threat that has taken decades to reach this point, but has now reached year-round catastrophic status. After spending a week plus watching this unfold from half the country away from Los Angeles, I find myself asking a question that probably isn't really that original. Why is this happening? Seriously, why is this happening over and over? Because very little has changed. Fires in Southern California, hurricanes in Texas and Florida, tornadoes in the Midwest, flooding in the mid-Atlantic and southern U.S., because that is the natural way of things in these parts of the country. In Southern California, the Santa Ana winds are nothing new. The manner in which they spread embers, that's not new either. Droughts in this area are relatively new. Not totally, but the way in which they present themselves, it's different. Much of this area is a desert, always has been. Earthquakes have always been a part of the region. The question that I see so many asking is, why does this keep happening? For the reasons listed above, and probably the most important reason, greed and an overwhelming urge by public officials to build more, grow faster. A few statements we should probably retire include, quote, end quote, we're building back better, and, quote unquote, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims. I believe that everyone would be better off if those who know nothing about a subject would be quiet about it. And thoughts and prayers, good Lord, it means nothing, and it certainly means nothing to those who have suffered loss, especially when those who say our thoughts and prayers are with them are the ones who have done the least. For reference, it was 1983. My family was living in the far southeast corner of the San Fernando Valley in Chatsworth. As far back as you could get without being in the mountains that separated the San Fernando Valley from Simi Valley. We raised horses, Arabians. My sister showed them, and I cleaned up after them. It was a crappy deal, and the reason I still don't like horses. It was a Saturday. Just came back from a Pop Warner football game, and by the time we smelled smoke, it was too late. There was no time. No time to prep, no time to get ready, no time to go. Again, 1983, no internet. We smelled smoke before there was a report on local news in LA. I had on a pair of board shorts and cowboy boots when I made it down to the barn. Hopped on one horse, had another in tow. My sister had the same, and by the time we made it to the gate, the ridge behind our house was on fire. My mom drove the Ford F-350 with a 4-horse trailer to get the more skittish horses out, and my dad stayed back to do what he could to try and save the structures. I was on that horse for 23 hours straight. When it was safe to return, the fire had burned right up to the door, but no further. My dad had several stories to share from that day. It included the car full of guys that drove up to the driveway, and when he stopped them, they told him that they were the owners and they were there to pick up their belongings. So the way my dad told the story, they got out of the car, 4 of them, and started to walk up on him. He drew his .38 and informed them that it was his house, and when they asked who was going to stop them from taking what they wanted, he simply replied that he and his 6 friends were up to the task. I think that's hilarious. I think it's also incredibly scary. But again, that was 1983, and times aren't much different. I think it's also important to note that if you've never been in a wildfire, it's terrifying. The sky turns an orangish black, the likes of which I can't really describe. The air becomes thick with acrid smoke. If you've ever been by a burning wood fire and had the smoke blow back at you from a campfire, you kind of get the feeling, but it's everywhere and there's no place to go. You can't breathe. We had bandanas wrapped around our mouths and nose and kept soaking them in water, and it would be dry 60 seconds later. There were embers flying through the air, and horses don't respond well to embers or smoke or fire. 23 hours. It was a long day, and one that still, as you can tell, I've never forgotten. And that's why, to those who have been through the Pacific Palisades fires, the Altadena fire, Lahaina, Paradise, or any other wildfire, I'm sorry. I understand. But it's important to not just understand the experience, but to understand why it happens and how to address it. And what I can tell you is that later that year, my father, well, I say my father, he instructed, I did the work. We removed the brush around the perimeter of the house. We had rainbirds installed on the roof of the house and the barn. This was my first experience with anything like that. Earthquakes, sure. I've always been accustomed to those. Never really minded them. There's not much you can do, and then they're over. But fires, floods, that's different. And now we find ourselves in a state of constant emergency across California and beyond. Fires are no longer seasonal in California, nor are floods, nor do they happen in places where they've happened in the past. Natural disasters are showing in the form of fires, floods, cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, derechos, like the one I told you about that hit us here in Tulsa in 2023. I think that most people have mistaken. What am I trying to say? I think they've mistakenly placed their faith and hope in leaders and politicians to pass legislation and craft an organized response to natural disasters. In California, if you haven't heard about this yet, you most likely will. Check the show notes for a link showing Mayor Karen Bass getting peppered by a reporter about being out of the country as the fires ravaged Pacific Palisades and surrounding areas like Altadena, as well as cutting she cut close to $18 million from the annual LA Fire Department budget. I don't understand how you can cut a budget or cut that amount from a budget knowing full well that wildfires in Southern California are a regular occurrence. The water tanks in the Palisades were reportedly not full. And it's really hard to understand how this can happen in a place like Southern California, where, again, fires are a regular occurrence. My point is this. If you put your faith in the fire department to put out a wildfire, they can't. If you put your faith in the police to prevent crime from impacting your life and those you love, they can't. They won't. It's important to note that I believe in and appreciate the work of our firefighters and police. I absolutely do, full stop. Fire and police are responsive, not proactive. They can only react after there's something to react to. And they are completely at the will and whim of politicians for fundraising. And it's never enough. Compound this with the insurance companies refusing to write policies in areas that are prone to extreme weather events, which is different now than it was even 5 years ago. I predict that this insurability trend will not only continue, but accelerate in line with the acceleration of extreme weather events. Insurance companies are businesses, and they look at potential threats. If anything, they're the canary in the coal mine. They're telling you what's going to happen, and we should listen. I also think this is the next iteration of the residential and commercial architecture and design renaissance that began really in earnest during the pandemic. Things are changing. If you want to look to someone for help, to save you and your treasures, to fortify your personal environment, to make you as safe as possible using every proactive tool in their arsenal, someone to future-proof and harden your home, look to the designers, architects, landscape architects, and manufacturers of incredible products. Architects evaluate topography, surroundings, and elevations. They can predict best paths for water to move away from the structure in cases of flooding. They specify the right materials to best defend against fire. They make structures fortresses against those who might try to break in. Look to landscape architects who will plant the right materials for the present and the future, be it drought tolerance or fire resistance or security. They too can help design exteriors for a safer and more impenetrable environment. Look to designers to craft spaces that allow for internal safety and comfort, materials that are less likely to burn and more likely to protect your investment. Check the show notes again for a link to an eye-opening report from my friends and partner sponsors of the show, TimberTech. It features flame spread and ignition resistance information. It's eye-opening. It really is. I believe that the days of blanket trust in our public officials to effectively protect and serve are over. We should wish those we vote into office the best. We pay our taxes and expect them to do what's right for the entire community. And if I sound jaded, I'm really not. I'm optimistic because I know what exceptional designers and architects can do. There are some exceptional products out there that speak directly to issues like this. But I also believe that the next level of luxury, that aspirational state that is hard to define but recognized when seen, is the feeling of safety and security. I'm really saddened to see my hometown burned, flooded, and looted. protections, safety, and security are an issue of self-determination. It's up to each of us individually to find the level of protection that makes us feel secure. If that is what you're looking for, look to a designer or an architect. Let's understand the economics of this. Perhaps city leaders and elected officials want their names on plaques and credit for all their good deeds. Or maybe they want immortality that comes from building big things. There's probably a combination of things, but civic leaders direct city staffs and direct policy that in many cases includes density ratios, zoning, and building policy. I was a commissioner for the city of Manhattan Beach for 6 years. The Library Commission was responsible for overseeing the Manhattan Beach Public Library. It was a branch of the County of Los Angeles library system. During my 6-year stint, we went from a dilapidated, outmoded branch of the library to the completion of a brand new, modern structure that continues to serve the people of Manhattan Beach. Again, check the show notes. There'll be a link. You can see it for yourself. I saw firsthand the inner workings of a city government that wanted big, beautiful things. I mean, what municipality doesn't? I also witnessed city council members fight tooth and nail the budgetary demands because they had other projects, they were fighting for the money, up and until the project was completed. And then they sharp elbowed each other out of the way to make sure that they were in the pictures that ran in the paper at the opening of the library. I saw it firsthand. And if you've ever had any exposure to government, municipality or up, I don't think it's that different. But I think we need to demand more. This is the Build Back Better paradox. You're not building back better. And as we consider this as it moves forward, it sounds good. It looks good on a bumper sticker. It looks good in social media. Build back better. What does that mean? While it makes a tight headline, and it's certainly clickable, the idea of building back with the same, if not greater density, is equal to believing you can beat Mother Nature. You can't. Believing we're going to become a safer society. We won't. It doesn't look that way. I was on a ride here in Oklahoma last year with a friend who was raised here in Oklahoma. And we passed this large plot of land. It had to be at least 15 acres that I could see from the highway. A small neighborhood with dozens and dozens of raised foundations, but nothing more. They clearly had been there for a while. And I asked what the story was. And he explained to me that they built this particular neighborhood back multiple times after tornadoes repeatedly tore the area apart. And they kept building, and tornadoes kept coming. Does this sound familiar? But they finally stopped building there. As will those in Southern California at some point in the future. Near or far, who's to say? There's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of money involved, and gosh, those views. Those views are amazing. Who wouldn't want them? Don't build back better. Build back smarter. You cannot change the climate back. This is not something that will happen in our lifetimes. It just won't. We have to be realistic about this. We can only adapt to the changing environment. And those who can make this transition successfully are designers, architects, landscape architects, engineers, futurists, and visionaries. No amount of tax revenue in the hands of elected officials will make it happen. And we have to stop thinking that it will. And I think we have to stop trusting their decisions. It was Reagan who said, trust but verify. I think we trust, but I don't think we verify. And if you were to go back and look at what some politicians have done in some of the areas that's been hit, it's horrific, it's horrendous, and it shouldn't be accepted. Anyway, you can't change it back. And those who have lost everything, I am so sorry. To those in office who continue to allow this to happen, shame on you. You should be voted out of office in favor of creative people with real quantifiable solutions. And I hope that happens during the next cycle. I really do. By the time you hear this episode, you will have been inundated with stories and reports of lack of leadership, civic mismanagement, relentless self-promotion, politicians of the situation specifically by an out-of-state and feckless politicians who have no understanding of the situation, but will still call for holding of emergency funding and the like. I think the challenge is it's become all about money and not about people. What you won't most likely hear are the practical solutions. Good, bad, unfeasible doesn't really matter, because what's missing right now are ideas. Because this is the time of year where most in the media are asking design and architecture talent what the big design trends of 2025 are going to be. It's asinine, truly. And if you think about it, it's completely pointless. It doesn't matter if the white kitchen is going to be popular in 2025 or not, if houses are burning down in neighborhoods because they're not being protected, because the exterior material isn't suitable for it, because we don't look seriously enough at passive houses or what those practical elements actually mean for construction, or how to make construction easier for those who have to do the building. Not less, but simpler. Title 24, I'm talking to you. So here are some of my ideas for rebuilding smarter. These are concepts that I have seen in practice and learned through the conversations you hear on Convo by Design. These are being thrown out to you as thought starters in the hopes that as we move forward, we can build back smarter, not better, not faster, but smarter. And that those who actually make the difference, the creatives, the architects, designers, landscape architects, manufacturers of products, that you will be the ones to help your clients with the best structure, dwelling, residence possible. So number one, I think, is a no-brainer. I think every home within a high fire risk area should have its own water supply. Hear me out. Years ago, you heard on the show from architect Anthony Laney of Laney, LA. He was telling you about a swimming pool that in Hermosa Beach that disappeared when a raised deck was lifted from the bottom of the pool and again submerged to reveal the pool. The client wanted a pool in a yard, but he also wanted the yard, couldn't have both. So Anthony figured it out with his team. And you saw it, you heard about it. It's real. I believe that every home in these areas should have something in the nature capable of providing the homeowner with at least 5,000 gallons of water available in case of emergency. It can be in a pool, a cocktail pool, a spa, an aquifer, something on premises that if there's a fire, the fire department can tap into, or that the homeowner themselves can tap into and wet the property until help arrives. I think this same personal aquifer should be connected to both a rain collection system as well as gray water collection, further connected to water the landscape. By doing this, it would serve as, yes, rainwater collection, gray water repurposing, and be available in case of fire emergency. Years ago, you heard a conversation with the USGBC and Gray Water Corps on the idea of a gray water collection system, which is already available in California. That was discussed. It's available. It can be used, it can be implemented today. And I think with a constant watering system, when not needed for a fire emergency, would also serve to help keep landscape watered so that it doesn't dry off, and become fodder for the next fire, to become fuel for the next fire that comes through. If you find yourself in the Midwest, you will see storm shelters. Many homes that don't have basements have them. They save lives. I have immense respect for firefighters and law enforcement. It's important to realize that they're not there for prevention, that they're there to react. And it's unfortunate because many believe that the police are there to protect you. It says so on the vehicles. It's a misnomer. Police cannot be everywhere all the time, nor can they read the minds of criminals. So we must protect ourselves. A while back, you heard from the folks at saferoom.com. I believe there needs to be a return to the concrete basement in residential construction, especially in fire-prone areas. Yes, we need to consider earthquakes, and that's what engineers are for. Across the U.S. in the 1950s, as well as in Southern California, in reaction to the ratcheting up Cold War, bomb and fallout shelters were built under and around homes. These shelters were concrete and built for around $1,000 or so in 1950s dollars. Many in Southern California fight against the basement, and I think that should change. With current materials and engineering advancements, building a walkout or full basement could address both security and property damage, theft, in cases of fire emergencies. And in many cases, basements are not counted towards a home's square footage when they're completely below grade. I can imagine a basement to secure valuables and provide security during extreme weather events or home invasion. I would like to see the state of California incorporate tax incentives into basement construction. Instead of building more above ground, build below grade, which would provide more open space above grade and less density above grade. This space could serve as a fire break against spreading flames. Something to think about. Leave the past in the past. I've been hearing from some in the industry that they want to return the Palisades in Altadena to their former glory in architectural style and detail, and that they want it done quickly, and that the environmental review process needs to be bypassed. Personal opinion, these are really, really terrible ideas. Yes, we need to build back, and we need to rehome those who have lost everything. But if we got into this situation by cutting corners, bypassing safeguards, and overbuilding in areas that are not conducive to this amount of development, what do we think will happen? If past is prologue, it's going to happen again. Not if, but when. Let's remove the insanely high cost of permitting, remove the layers of bureaucracy, pause and review the overly stringent codes associated with Title 24, and get back to reasonable and practical building methods. Let's review zoning guidelines. We have overbuilt these communities because with great wealth comes great influence, and politicians and city staffs love to increase the tax base. But when there are no resources to serve the community, it ceases to function. Look at the Pacific Palisades if you want to see an example today. Look at Lahaina. We have reached the breaking point in many cases. Do we really need to build lot line to lot line, save for mandatory easements? Does a family of 4 or 5 really need a 10,000 square foot home? Show me where that's a right, or better yet, show me some civic responsibility. If you want a neighborhood that's like it used to be, if you want to respect the history of a neighborhood, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, we didn't overbuild property lines. So which is it? Obscure requirements in zoning. In 2020, the IHO went into effect, the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. It's another one. This states that in LA County, this requires low-income housing units or affordable housing units be required as a percentage of residential housing units built. Now, before all the NIMBYs praise this and all the bleeding hearts decry it, can we be honest about this? You can put low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades, and the low-income residents will not have the financial means to afford to patronize local businesses. That hurts business. It also puts the low-income resident in an unfortunate situation, and it hurts the city's tax base because they have to go elsewhere to buy their goods. Instead, look to infill projects in areas that need it. The California Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, by the way, did you even know that that existed? Refers to California's infill development as building within, quote, building within unused and underutilized lands within existing development patterns, typically but not exclusively in urban areas. Infill development is critical to accommodating growth and redesigning our cities to be environmentally and socially sustainable, end quote. When you look at burn-scarred Southern California and demolished cities, what's the goal? Is the goal to build back better, which has basically no real meaning to it, only to say that it will be built back even bigger, then you are destined for the same results at some point. Or you can build back smarter. According to Realtor.com, the homes for sale in Pacific Palisades range from 290,000 to 40 million. That's a huge spread. According to Adam Data, in Q4 2024, there were 8,960 residential properties in Pacific Palisades. Average age was 59 years, and the average square footage was 2,977 square feet for a single-family residence. There are a number of estimates out there, but USA Today puts the number of homes destroyed in Pacific Palisades at 1,200, with another 200 other structures damaged or destroyed. These 1,200 homes are where real people lived, loved, gathered, and where they kept their most cherished belongings. We're talking about this now, and many are going to say it's too soon. Perhaps. But it's always too soon until it's too late. And there will be those who try to come in, scoop up lots, and develop big, massive, and expensive residential projects. That just seems to be the way these things go sometimes. These homes will command big prices and big tax returns for the municipalities and the state. Some will look at combining lots and build back bigger. Some others will say there should be preservation of older styles to match what the city looked like before. I don't believe you can look back, but you can look forward to building back with purpose, respecting Pacific Palisades history, Altadena's history, respecting that as you move forward smartly. Let's talk about a thoughtful approach to the future. Some of the easiest ways to approach this now. How about reconfiguration? How about undergrounding of utilities? Adding solar installations for residential, commercial, and municipal applications. Why not underground fiber while you're at it? Municipal solar and hydrogen charging stations. If you're looking at infill, if you're looking at rebuilding neighborhoods and communities, this is a great opportunity. Community approach to emergent groups. An emergent group is a collective of individuals coming together to address a particular issue. When I was living in Manhattan Beach, I was recruited by some of my neighbors to join Neighborhood Watch. Later, I became a block captain, which, yes, I had a vest, and no, I didn't wear it. But that led to an invitation to join CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. You've heard stories of neighbors coming together to help each other in times of need, disaster, or emergency. Traditionally, some communities without an organized police or fire department have taken the initiative. But we're living in a more complicated, highly dense community environment. And it's time for every community that falls in emergency zones, which I guess is just about everyone these days, to come together in this type of neighbor-to-neighbor shared assistance partnership. Most police and fire departments welcome the help, and usually it only takes one person to organize it through the city. It doesn't even have to be a resident. And I believe this is a place for the design community to really step up. Design professionals are keenly aware of the local regulations, neighborhood differences, and this could be an opportunity to not only increase business, which would be a perk, but to help protect your work and that of other creatives in that community in the process. We're going to be discussing a lot more about this in the future. And by the way, my experience on the community emergency response team was exceptional. I learned skills from that remain with me today. It was a great experience, and it was neighbor to neighbor, hand to hand, and if and when things would happen, they would call on us, and we would be there. And it was great. That, in conjunction with the neighborhood watch, I think every community should have that. It not only keeps the neighborhood safer, but it also creates more of a community because you know your neighbors. And I think that's important. So this one gets a little sticky. Manufactured, fabricated, and modular stock. This just might be what changes the future of housing. As one might imagine, this manufactured home idea, it got its start on wheels. A natural way of adding to the new freedoms brought on by the advent of the automobile. Then kick the wheels off and you have the same mobile coach, but as a stationary dwelling. That led to a period of time when manufactured homes were advancing and addressing housing issues in real time. Just as the track home created much needed housing units for retiring GIs after World War II, so did the manufactured home industry by providing housing in manufactured home communities. Since the very start of the manufactured home industry, this was viewed as affordable and a lower cost building for those with lower incomes. The original low income housing, I guess. And we have come a long way in construction and manufacturing. Prefabricated versus stick-built. We could probably bring experts in on both sides to debate this issue for weeks, but we won't because we don't have time for that. What we do have are some companies out there prefabricating and assembling on site, which is capable of turning traditional construction absolutely upside down. Check out a few of these companies: Stillwater Dwellings, Devell, Turkle Design. The idea that one could order a prefabricated home, prep the lot, and assemble on site can do a number of things that speak to issues we're trying to address, like sustainability, material shortages, out of control costs, construction, and so much more. Listen, the price of goods are going up again. I shouldn't say they're going up again. They haven't stopped going up since the pandemic. It hasn't stopped. And they're on the rise again. In 2020, 2022, the international and domestic supply chains froze up due to the crush of demand due to the pandemic. From 22 to 24, many of those costs initially came down. But as we enter 2025, the costs are once again on the rise, due in part to a number of factors. Brands like Thermador, Bosch, Sub-Zero Wolf have already announced price increases between 3 and 8%. Other brands are evaluating their price increases as we speak. There are a number of factors to consider as we move cautiously forward. China has been dumping cheap steel, which then makes its way into the U.S., mostly through Mexico, and it makes its way into U.S. manufacturing and lowers overall manufacturing cost at the expense of U.S.-made steel and others. The Trump administration is cracking down, which will increase costs. We've already seen now a 25% tariff on international imported steel and aluminum. There's a very real possibility that the immigration crackdown will also affect those who work on and assemble appliances. That will cause cost increases and a lack of individuals to do the work. By the way, this also affects case goods, furnishings, furniture, you name it. Immigration and workers and trades will be affected at just about every aspect of the home building process. This will most likely create a shortage of finished appliances, finished goods in general, but finished appliances. This in turn will create emergency pricing and delays. Tariffs aren't new. You know this. And we've heard a lot about tariffs in the last 6 months. But did you know that the Biden administration bumped Canadian lumber tariffs to 14.5%? An article from freightwaves.com showed a number of ways tariffs will continue to affect costs by American consumers. If this continues, as it is likely to do so, these costs will continue to rise. This creates a very uncomfortable situation for the design build professionals who are going to be tapped with the responsibility of designing and building the homes that not only replace the ones lost in the fires, but all of the homes not yet destroyed in future disasters. The way we specify, purchase, deliver, and install building materials has to change. The supply chain needs to be condensed, organized, and strategic. In California, the first Franciscan mission, okay, I'm going off on a on a tangent here, but there was a method to how this was done in California. The first Franciscan mission was built in 1796. And a total of 21 were constructed between 1796 and 1833. This is what's interesting. They were constructed about 30 miles apart for a relatively easy one-day journey between each. These outposts needed to be self-sufficient. If industry-specific supply chains were built in this manner, delivery estimates would be precise. Delivery costs would drop. It would be environmentally responsible by cutting the amount of miles products are transported. It could increase local jobs and spur local product assembly. This is already happening. If you look at Amazon, Amazon has already learned the lesson, and you can see these massive fulfillment centers. You can see them from space. In California alone, there are over 35 current or planned centers for product distribution. This is a long-term objective, but one that needs to happen. In the meantime, what would happen if designers were hired sooner, plans approved faster, and product could be specified and ordered sooner? What if materials could be staged locally, ready and waiting for crews to begin work? This would expedite the design build process exponentially. And I predict that it would lower costs significantly. It's like getting your designer paid for through efficiency offsets. Think about it. Front running versus specify as you go. If we have learned nothing from the great toilet paper run of 2020, it's that being able to recognize issues that are coming to the fore and front running. And I've talked to designers on the show, and you've heard from them who some front run these. They get ahead of price increases. They get ahead of product shortages. In many cases, they will pre-order, pre-buy, and store. And this is a line item that's included in the cost to the clients. Many clients, when you say, hey, listen, do you want it on time? It's going to cost you a little bit more because we're going to have to store it. Many won't fight you on that for good reason. And finally, expect exceptionalism. I don't mean this in the way that you hear about it constantly used in political rhetoric. I mean it as stated. Seek exceptionalism in the products and services you purchase, both those in the trade and clients look to this alike. Designers really should stop this endless fascination with the pursuit of trend, celebrity design, and whatever the latest influencer is peddling on anti-social media. Designers are professionals who specialize in design. Many designers hold degrees in this. All architects do as well. Landscape architects possess an understanding of what goes where and what it should look like over time. Product manufacturers absorb the cost of research and development to produce a product that the market can then choose or not. But buying things based on number of followers, not the success of the project, is detrimental. I think everything that the design industry looks to now, including this podcast, including what I do, look to your journalists, look to your magazines, look to where do you get your information? Expect exceptionalism. Seek it out. It'll make all of us better. Listen, I am so sorry. Everyone that has been affected by the recent fires, the fires before those, and the ones that are yet to come, I am so sorry. I hope the recovery is seamless and easy. I hope this never happens again. It will. So let's be prepared for it. Let's be thoughtful in the way we build back by looking to the design professionals first, making our elected leaders earn their jobs by thinking of their constituents first, respecting the true value of our firefighters and law enforcement by looking inward to protect our homes smartly. Let's return to an era of innovation through new materials and design experience. If we can eliminate the waste, greed, and mismanagement, this presents an exceptional opportunity to not only regain former glory, but establish the new paradigm for what a well-designed, well-run, fully functional city looks like. If we can do that, we're in a good place. And who doesn't want that? Thanks for listening. Until next week, be well, stay focused, and try to avoid the chaos.